I moved into my apartment 4 months ago, a second-floor unit in an old converted house on the west side of town. The rent was cheap, and the landlord didn't ask many questions, which is exactly what I needed after my divorce. The place was small but private, just one bedroom and a kitchen that barely fit a table. The only weird thing was the door in my bedroom closet. It was locked and painted shut, and when I asked the landlord about it, he said it used to connect to the attic but was sealed off years ago for safety reasons. He said I should just ignore it. I did, until 3 Friday nights ago when I heard something moving behind it. It was around midnight. I'd just gotten into bed when I heard a shuffling sound coming from my closet. Not loud, just a soft scraping like something being dragged across wood. I sat up and listened. It stopped. I told myself it was mice or pipes, even though I knew the sound was too deliberate for that. I tried to go back to sleep but couldn't shake the feeling that something was in there, just on the other side of that locked door. The next morning, I examined the closet more carefully. The door was definitely sealed. Layers of old paint covered the frame and the handle had been removed completely, just a smooth patch where it used to be. There was no way anything could get through. But that night, Friday again, the sounds came back, louder this time. And there was something else. Breathing, slow and heavy, like someone struggling to inhale. I called the landlord Saturday morning and told him I needed to check the attic. He said that wasn't possible, that the attic was completely closed off and had been for over a decade. When I pressed him, asking why it had been sealed, he got defensive. He said there had been some structural issues and it was too expensive to maintain. He said if the sounds bothered me, I could break my lease early with no penalty. That response scared me more than the sounds themselves. What kind of landlord offers to let a tenant leave without penalty because of noises? I decided to stay. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I also bought a heavy-duty padlock for my bedroom door, just in case. The following Friday, I was ready. I set up my phone to record audio and placed it inside the closet, right against the sealed door. I wanted proof of what I was hearing. At 11:45 p.m., the sound started. I listened from my bed as the shuffling and breathing began again, this time accompanied by something new. Scratching, fingernails on wood, methodical and persistent. This went on for over 2 hours before finally stopping around 2 a.m. I retrieved my phone and played back the recording. The sounds were clear and undeniable, but there was something else I hadn't heard in real time. Between the scratches and breathing, there was a voice. Quiet and distorted, but definitely human. It was saying something over and over. I couldn't make out the words at first, so I played it again at higher volume. That's when I heard it clearly. The voice was saying my name, whispering it, again and again. And it knew the nickname only my ex-wife used. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom after that. I started sleeping on the couch with the TV on for noise, but every Friday night I could still hear it. The shuffling, the breathing, the scratching. It was getting louder each week, more aggressive. Last Friday, I finally broke. I went into my bedroom closet with a hammer and pry bar, determined to open that door and see what was behind it. The paint cracked easily, flaking away in thick chips. The frame was old and soft from water damage. I wedged the pry bar into the gap and pushed. The door resisted at first, then suddenly gave way with a loud crack. It swung inward, revealing darkness and a smell that made me gag. Old rot and mildew and something sweet like spoiled fruit. I shined my flashlight inside. The attic was smaller than I expected, just a crawl space about 4 feet high. The floor was covered in old insulation and debris, but in the center, directly in front of the door, was a pile of belongings. Clothes, books, photographs, personal items, all of them coated in dust. I climbed inside and looked closer. The photographs showed a woman, maybe in her 30s, smiling in various locations. The clothes were women's clothes, sizes that looked similar to mine, and the books had a name written inside the front covers. My name, not my ex-wife's nickname, my actual full legal name, the one I'd started using again after the divorce. the one I'd put on the rental application. I backed out of the attic slowly, my skin crawling. On the wall just inside the door, scratched into the wood, was a message. "She lived here first. She's still here. She doesn't want you to stay." I packed a bag that night and went to a hotel. I've been staying with a friend ever since, trying to figure out what to do. I searched online for information about my apartment building. It took some digging, but I found an old news article from 8 years ago. A woman disappeared from my address. She was last seen on a Friday night. Her name matched the one in the books. Her description matched the photos. The police investigated but found nothing. No body, no evidence of foul play. The case went cold. According to the article, the landlord at the time claimed she'd simply moved out without notice and left her belongings behind. He'd sealed the attic to avoid dealing with abandoned property, but she'd never been found. And now I understand why. She'd never left. She'd been there the whole time, and she'd been waiting for someone like me, someone alone, someone vulnerable, someone whose name she could learn, someone she could call to. My grandfather died on a Friday morning in September, and I inherited his house, a small place 30 miles outside the city surrounded by woods. I'd only visited a handful of times as a kid, and my memories of it were vague. Dark paneling, low ceilings, windows that looked out at nothing but trees. The lawyer handling the estate said my grandfather had lived alone for the last 15 years, ever since my grandmother passed. No close neighbors, no visitors, just him and the house. I decided to spend a few weekends there, going through his things before deciding whether to sell. The first Friday night I stayed there, I understood why he'd lived alone. I arrived in the late afternoon with enough supplies for the weekend. The house looked worse than I remembered, paint peeling, porch sagging but structurally sound. Inside wasn't much better. Dust covered everything. The air was stale and smelled like old paper and something else, something organic I couldn't place. I opened windows and started going through the front rooms, sorting items into boxes marked keep, donate, or trash. Most of it was trash. Old magazines, broken furniture, clothes that moths had destroyed. By the time it got dark, I was exhausted. I made a sandwich and sat in the kitchen, listening to the silence. That's when I heard the first knock. 3 sharp knocks on the front door. I checked my watch, 8:30. I wasn't expecting anyone. The nearest house was at least 2 miles away. I turned on the porch light and looked through the peephole. Nobody there. I opened the door anyway, stepping out onto the porch. The yard was empty, just darkness and the tree line 50 feet away. I went back inside and locked the door. 10 minutes later, 3 more knocks. Same rhythm, same intensity. I looked through the peephole again. Nothing. This time I didn't open the door. I stood there, watching, waiting. After a few minutes, I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, heavy footsteps moving from one end to the other. Then they stopped. I looked through the peephole one more time. A face was pressed against the other side, inches from the door. Too dark to see features. Just a pale, oval shape staring back at me. I stumbled backwards and the face disappeared. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with all the lights on, listening. The knocking came again at midnight, then at 2 a.m., then at 4. Always 3 knocks, always the same. When sunrise finally came, I went outside to examine the porch. There were muddy footprints leading up to the door and then away, heading toward the woods. But they didn't look like regular footprints. They were too long, too narrow, and they only showed the front part of the foot, like whoever made them walked on their toes. I followed them to the edge of the trees and stopped. I wasn't going in there. I went back inside and called my uncle, asking if he knew anything strange about the house. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said my grandfather had mentioned something years ago, something about visitors. He told my uncle that something came to the house every Friday night. He never explained what it was, just said he'd learned to ignore it. I should have left right then. I should have gotten in my car and never come back. but I told myself I was being irrational. I was a grown adult, alone in an old house, letting my imagination run wild. I decided to stay one more night to prove to myself there was nothing to be afraid of. That Friday evening, I prepared differently. I locked every door and window. I kept my phone charged and within reach. I positioned myself in the living room where I could see both the front door and the back door. At 8:30, right on schedule, the knocking started. 3 knocks. Front door, I didn't move. The knocking continued, coming every few minutes for over an hour. Then it stopped. Silence. I started to relax. That's when I heard the scratching. It started at the back door. Long, slow scratches like fingernails on wood. Then it moved to the windows, methodically working around the house. Kitchen window, living room window, bedroom window, always scratching, never stopping. I sat frozen, listening to it circle the house. When it reached the front door again, the knocking resumed. But this time it was different, louder, more insistent. The door shook with each impact. I grabbed my phone and started to dial 911, but I had no signal. I ran to the kitchen. No signal there either. The knocking was getting louder, faster. Then I heard something that made my blood freeze. A voice. Low and raspy, barely human. It said my name, my full name. It said, "Let me in. Your grandfather always let me in." I spent the rest of that night hiding in the basement with a flashlight and a kitchen knife. The knocking continued until dawn, getting more and more violent. Several times I thought the door would break, but it held. When sunlight finally came through the basement window, everything went quiet. I waited an hour before going upstairs. The front door had deep scratches all over it, gouges in the wood like someone had attacked it with a rake. The windows were worse. Every single one had scratches, some so deep they'd cracked the glass. I packed my car in 15 minutes and left. I called a real estate agent from the road and told them to list the house as is. I didn't care about the money anymore. I just wanted nothing to do with that place. The house was sold 3 weeks ago to a young couple looking for a quiet place in the country. I thought about warning them, but I didn't know what I'd say. What could I tell them that wouldn't sound insane? 2 days ago, I got a call from my wife. She said they'd been there a week and were already having problems. She asked if I'd experienced anything unusual when I stayed there. I asked what was unusual. She said every Friday night someone knocks on their door 3 times, over and over. She said her husband went outside to confront whoever it was, but there was no one there, just footprints in the dirt. Strange footprints. I told her I didn't know anything about it. I told her it was probably animals or local kids playing pranks. She didn't sound convinced. Before she hung up, she asked me one more question. She asked if my grandfather had died in the house. I told her no. He died in the hospital, but that was a lie. I'd read the death certificate. My grandfather died at home on a Friday night. They found him by the front door. It was unlocked. My girlfriend Emma moved into her new apartment on a Friday in late November, and I helped her carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs until my arms felt like they were going to fall off. The place was old but cheap, and she was excited to finally have her own space. It was a studio with hardwood floors that creaked and windows that looked out over a narrow alley. The landlord had mentioned that the previous tenant left suddenly, but he didn't say why. Emma didn't care. She just wanted out of her parents' house. I stayed until almost midnight helping her unpack, and when I left, she seemed happy. That was the last normal conversation we had. She called me the next Friday, around 11 p.m. Her voice sounded wrong, strained. She said she kept hearing footsteps in the apartment above hers. Heavy footsteps pacing back and forth, always starting around 10 and continuing for hours. I asked if she'd complained to the landlord. She said she had, but he told her the apartment above hers was empty. It had been empty for 6 months. I could hear the footsteps through the phone while we talked. Steady, deliberate thuds, back and forth. back and forth. I told her it was probably the building settling or noise from a different apartment carrying through the walls. She didn't sound convinced, but she said okay and hung up. I should have gone over there that night. The Friday after that, she called me at 2 in the morning, crying. She said the footsteps had been going for 4 hours straight, and now there was scratching. Long, slow scratches against her ceiling, like fingernails dragging across wood. She tried banging on her ceiling with a broom handle to make it stop, but the scratching only got louder. I threw on clothes and drove to her place, probably breaking a dozen traffic laws. When I got there, she was sitting on her couch with every light in the apartment turned on. Her eyes were red and wide. The scratching had stopped when I arrived, but she played me a recording she'd made on her phone. The sound was unmistakable. Something was definitely moving up there. We went upstairs together. The door to the apartment above hers had a piece of paper taped to it. Notice unit condemned, no entry. The door was locked, but through the small gap at the bottom, I could smell something awful. Rot and mildew and something else, something chemical. I knocked anyway. No answer. No sound at all. Emma grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. We went back downstairs and I stayed with her that night, sleeping on the couch while she locked herself in the bathroom with a blanket and pillow. Around 4 a.m., the footsteps started again. I lay there listening, trying to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation. There wasn't. On Monday, Emma went to the landlord's office in person. She demanded to know what was in the apartment above hers. He got defensive, said it was none of her business, said the unit was being renovated and she needed to stop complaining. When she threatened to break her lease, he finally told her the truth. The previous tenant of the upstairs apartment had died up there, alone. It took 3 weeks for anyone to notice. The landlord had the place cleaned, but he couldn't rent it after that. Too many complaints. People heard things, saw things. One couple lasted 2 days before they moved out. Emma asked what the previous tenant died from. The landlord said he wasn't sure. Natural causes, probably. But when Emma pushed harder, he admitted the police had investigated. They never determined exactly what happened. That Friday, Emma asked me to come over early. She wanted to leave before night, maybe stay at my place for the weekend. I agreed. When I got there around 6 p.m., she had bags packed and was ready to go. But before we left, she wanted to show me something. She'd been keeping a log of the sounds, writing down times and descriptions. The pattern was clear. Every Friday night, starting at 10 p.m., ending around dawn. Always the same. Footsteps first, then scratching, then long periods of silence, then footsteps again. She'd also found something else. A loose floorboard near her closet. When she pulled it up, there was a space underneath. Inside that space was a notebook, water damaged and moldy but readable. It belonged to someone named Claire. The entries were dated from 2 years ago. The last entry was dated on a Friday. It just said, "It knows I'm here." We left immediately. Emma never went back for her things. She paid to break the lease and moved in with me temporarily. A few weeks later, we drove past her old building. There was a fire truck outside and police tape across the entrance. I asked someone standing nearby what happened. They said the building was being evacuated. Something about structural damage. The 3rd floor had partially collapsed. When I asked which apartment, they pointed up. It was the one above Emma's. Through the broken ceiling, I could see into the condemned unit. The floor was covered in scratch marks, deep ones carved into the wood. And in the center of the room was a shape, dark and stained into the floorboards. It looked like someone had been lying there for a very long time. Emma saw it too. She hasn't spoken about that apartment since.